is Jan from the Fuzzy Duckling. We're going to start a series on using your scrapbooking talents to archive your family treasures and mementos. And the reason we're doing this is to give it to the future generation, to give it to your grandkids and your great-grandkids and people on down the line. It seems to me that in every family there is the one that seems to inherit all of the family pictures, the documents, treasures, and even furniture sometimes. If you're a scrapbooker, what better way to organize and store all of those photos and papers and mementos than to use your gift of scrapbooking? Future generations will thank you when they become old enough to be interested in learning about their past. And if you are like me and you are the one, it can be overwhelming to find a way to accomplish this task. I actually have several bins full of mementos and photos, and they're from both sides of my family. As an example, I had a small container that had some things that were my dad's. One thing I think is very precious to me are his dog tags from World War II. It's so neat. He also had, look at this money. Isn't this neat? This is money from like Germany and France and Czechoslovakia. He brought these back from the war with him. Aren't these neat looking? I think they had such pretty money. These great big bills. There were several other things in that little container that was left. The sad thing is I don't know the stories around them. I should have talked to him more while I still had my dad. And those stories now will be lost forever. So that's a lesson I learned that I wanted to pass on to you. If you have grandmas and grandpas still living, or moms and dads, talk to them now. Don't wait. Video them or write down their stories while you still have them around to tell them. And they'll love it that you are so interested in them to want to know about their past lives. Well, as I said, I have bins of these kinds of items. And sadly, I have to admit to have been lax in doing anything at all to get it all organized. But the other day I realized that I'm getting older. In fact, I'm the only one left in my birth family. So when I'm gone, there will be hundreds of stories and facts about our family that will be lost forever. Stories that I know, but my kids don't know. And they'll be lost forever if I'm not careful. So this has become the main thing on my bucket list. I want to get all of these mementos organized and all the memories and stories written down for my future family. I'm just starting this process, so if you would like to do this with me for your family, just kind of follow along as I upload some videos and give you some ideas of what to do or how to organize. I'll be finding a lot of this out for myself too, so I'll try to share with you whenever I can. The first question, though, that hit me is, where do I start with all this? So, first, start by gathering as much information and as many items as possible that pertains to your family. And this process may take you several days, several weeks, several months, or probably like me, several years. Here's a picture of someone I think you'll recognize. Let's move this out of the way a little bit. There we go. Do you recognize this guy? Sherlock. Be a Sherlock. Start a search through all of your belongings. You'll be surprised at how many things are stashed in 100 different places that pertain to your family. And depending on the amount of things you find, get some bins to store them in for now. We'll talk a little bit later what to do with them once you get them all gathered up. And then after you've done that, be a Sherlock again. Ask others in your family if they have photos or documents that you could either have or make copies of. Be sure, though, when you do this, and note where you obtain these items. You'll want to know that later. If you have a small recorder or a phone that will record, videotape them telling stories about their lives. One more thing you can do is do an internet search. You'll be surprised at what you can find on the internet that pertains to members of your family. And we'll talk more about that in another post. So, the next thing you'll need to do is choose the first person that you're going to scrapbook about. Now, again, if you're like me, you won't want to wait until you have information on everybody in your family to start scrapbooking. And too, like mine, there are hundreds of people on my family tree. There's a lot of choices. And the farther back I go, the less I have about them. But the closer to me, I have a lot of information. So first, I thought I would start with someone fairly simple, my grandfather. But as I was going through these bins, hunting for things, I found something I actually didn't know I had, and that is an old diary that my mother had written. Look at this. This is so neat. I'll read you a little spot here I found that I thought was cute. But look at this. She has like cards that were given to her and thank you notes and all kinds of things she had written down about the day. But she had written a cute thing. I had a friend over, I remember one time. And my name's Jan. I won't give you my friend's name. She might not like that, even though it's been years and years ago. But my mother gave us some pie baking lessons. And she said Jan made crusts for cream pie for the weekend. That sounds so good. And then she was in the parsonage. My dad was a pastor in Los Angeles. And the parsonage was next to this great big white church. And Mom said some little boys just came around and asked Bob, my dad, if they could see in the church. One had talked to Bob before. He said he had been told 3 people were buried in the church. He was so anxious to get in there and try to find those 3 dead people. Don't think he ever did. But I found that this diary was a fascinating read. I absolutely loved it. There were things that I had done with my mom that I had forgotten about, and it reminded me, and there's things I don't remember doing at all. After reading this, it was then that I realized who I should start out with on my first person to scrapbook. And actually, no, it's not my mother. And I have scads of things on my mother. There's one other person that only really knows all the stories that needs to be told right now. And that's me. Who else knows me better? Who else could scrapbook me better and tell what had happened to me and what I thought and all the things that had gone on in my life? You may say, no, I can't do that. And again, like me, most of us scrappers love to work with pictures of our kids and our grandkids and our pets. And that is great, and that is understandable. And we also seem to think it's self-centered and selfish to scrap our own lives. I've actually heard others say, who would want to see my things or know about me? Well, I'll tell you, someday, your kids, your grandkids, your grand-grandkids, your grand-grand-grandkids, and on. If you doubt me, think about how you would feel if you found the diary of your great-great-grandmother or your great-great-grandfather. Wouldn't you love it? So, right now, you have the chance to give the gift that only you can give to one of your future family members. So, with that in mind, go through all of those gathered items that you just put in bins and pull out the ones about yourself. Or did you even gather personal items about you? If not, start the hunt all over again and hunt for things about you. Don't leave yourself out of this family story. You're too important. So here's some ideas on things to hunt for if you haven't already found these. An important one, your birth certificate. Now, you'll need to decide whether you want to put originals in your scrapbook and put them in safely, or if you'll want to make copies. Those are decisions you'll need to make. But at least a copy of your birth certificate would be wonderful. How about baby pictures? Everyone loves baby pictures. Look for your baby pictures. Aren't these wonderful? Let's see. If you were in the church, you might have been given a cradle roll certificate. This is a little booklet that has little poems and prayers and stuff in, and then it lists your name and when you were added to the cradle roll. They're usually pretty little certificates. How about pictures of the house you lived in right after you were born? Or photos of your mom and dad. My mom was the sweetest person I think that ever lived, and I'll always remember her for that. Everyone seemed to love her. My dad was a pastor, and he was a passionate hellfire pastor. You could sit in the pew and feel the flames of hell licking on your toes. But he was a wonderful man. Here's my brother. He was about 9 years old when I was born. Isn't he a cutie? What about all those pictures you got taken of you, whether you wanted it or not, for the school yearbook? Or how about your report cards or homework you may have kept? How about, let's see, what else? Games. Did you keep any old games you played that might have some neat cards you could scrapbook? You can do some really cute things with these. This is an old game that my husband played with while he was a child. I played with, or my favorite game when I was little, was Old Maid. Do you remember that game? They have some really neat pictures that will jazz up your scrapbook pages. Let's see, how about your wedding? Do you have pictures of your wedding? How about invitations? Or those old love letters you wrote before and hopefully after you were married? See, what else do I have here? Oh, isn't this a cute little thing? If you can make it out on the camera. This is really, really old. My aunt, who lived across the street, well, actually, it would be a great aunt. It would be my mom's aunt. She used to crochet these tiny little dresses for these tiny, tiny little dolls. You can see by my finger how little that doll was. And I still have one. I just can't imagine the patience that took for her to do this. Or, let's see, do you remember when churches and Sunday schools used to give you little pins for perfect attendance? You'd get one every year, and they would hang on the back, and you'd get this long string of pins that you could pin on your dress or your shirt. This is a second-year one. I'll be honest, I'm not sure who this one was. Somebody in my family earned 2 years. How about old library cards? There's just so many things that you can collect about your life that will be interesting in your scrapbook. Let's see. How about old driver's licenses? Or pictures and documents from your jobs? Well, here's another important one. If you have children, how about the day your kids were born? And really, that is just the beginning of what you can put in a scrapbook about yourself. Put some historical facts. Who was president when you were born? What major events happened in your lifetime? And write about them. Write about your feelings when these things happened and what you thought about things. They will love this when they read about you in years to come. So, get started on this. I really encourage you to. And in the next post, we'll talk a little about organizing these things and how to make it easier to scrapbook the overwhelming abundance sometimes of what you'll have. And you will need to choose a style of your scrapbook. Will it look vintage? Will it look up to date? Will it look snazzy? Is it going to be perfectly neat? Will it be a junk journal? There's so many things you can do. But whatever, let's get started on this story of our life and on the story of your life. Well, I'm going to stop now, and I need to get to work on this, and I will come back and give you another post how to make some things that will help you get going. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.